The Grand Intergalactic Union had stood unchallenged for over 1,000 millennia. Formed from the greatest minds and most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, it had brought peace, stability, and technological enlightenment to thousands of star systems. War had become a thing of the past. Conflicts were resolved through diplomacy, and if that failed, sheer technological superiority ensured that no opponent lasted long enough to become a serious threat. But all of that changed the day the Erebus Swarm arrived. The first sign of trouble had been the silence. The Asymmetric relay, an advanced communication station near the galactic edge, had gone dark without explanation. The Union's protocols dictated an immediate investigation, and so the Eighth Fleet was dispatched, a fleet so vast and powerful that, in any other era, it would have been considered overkill. But when the fleet reached the relay's coordinates, they found nothing. Not debris, not distress signals, just an empty void where an entire star system had been. Then, the darkness spread. Worlds started vanishing from the galactic network. Attempts at communication failed, and reconnaissance ships sent to investigate simply never returned. At first, Union analysts believed it to be some kind of natural phenomenon, an anomaly beyond their understanding. But soon, the reality became clear. A force unlike any the galaxy had ever seen was invading. The Erebus Swarm. The first visual confirmation of the enemy came from the doomed planet of Kelzar Prime. The footage, recovered from a fragmented distress beacon, showed a massive, writhing mass of biomechanical monstrosities blotting out the sky. Some of the creatures were as large as capital ships, their twisted, blackened forms rippling with eerie, unnatural energy. Others were nothing more than shadows, moving in patterns that defied every known law of physics. The broadcast lasted 37 seconds before it cut to static. It was the last thing the Union ever heard from Kelzar Prime. Within days, entire fleets were mobilized. The Grand Union Armada, an unstoppable force that had kept the peace for thousands of years, was deployed to meet the swarm head-on. Their confidence was absolute. Never before had a foe resisted the might of the Union's war machine, and the admirals of the Union were certain that this time would be no different. They were wrong. The Battle of the Orion Expanse was over in less than an hour. An armada of 5,000 warships, each one capable of reducing planets to dust, engaged the swarm's advance, believing their superior firepower would guarantee victory. The battle began with the Union's signature strategy: overwhelming barges of ionized plasma, artificial singularity missiles, and hyperwave disruptors designed to obliterate even the strongest defenses. None of it worked. The Erebus Swarm didn't dodge the attacks. They absorbed them. The Union's weapons, designed to annihilate anything they struck, vanished into the black abyss of the swarm's living void. The more they fired, the stronger the enemy seemed to grow. And then, the swarm struck back. What happened next wasn't a battle. It was annihilation. Union ships, each one the pinnacle of technological mastery, were torn apart like they were made of paper. No shielding, no evasive maneuvering, no countermeasures could stop the onslaught. The Erebus Swarm moved like a force of nature, impossible to predict, impossible to counter. The last transmission from the Grand Admiral of the fleet, Kale, was a desperate, chilling plea. They don't fight like anything we've ever seen. It's not an army. It's a force. A nightmare. By the stars, we're already dead. The transmission cut off mid-sentence. The Orion Expanse was lost. Panic spread through the Union. The idea of defeat was unthinkable. The Union had never lost a war. They had never faced a threat that couldn't be reasoned with or overpowered. But the Erebus Swarm didn't negotiate. It didn't strategize. It simply devoured. Supreme Chancellor Valar Threx called an emergency summit, summoning the leaders of the Union's most powerful civilizations. The meeting took place in the Celestial Spire, the heart of the Union's government, a massive construct orbiting the capital world of Ilithia Prime. It was a gathering unlike any in history, attended by beings of every shape, size, and species, all of them united by a single, terrifying realization. The Union was going to fall. The debate that followed was chaotic. Some called for full-scale evacuation of the core worlds. Others insisted that the swarm's weakness had simply not yet been found. Union AI strategists attempted to generate countermeasures, but every simulation ended the same way: total extinction within a standard galactic cycle. No strategy, no technology, no weapon the Union possessed could stop the swarm. And then, a voice spoke up from the shadows. Perhaps we were thinking about this the wrong way. All eyes turned to Dr. Sion Rowe, one of the Union's leading xenostrategists. A small, unassuming being from the planet Tessur. 9. Dr. Rowe had spent decades studying the military histories of lesser-developed species. Most had dismissed her work as academic curiosity, interesting, but ultimately useless in a galaxy where war was obsolete. Now, as the most brilliant minds in the galaxy stood helpless, her words carried a weight they never had before. "We have spent too long relying on our technology," she continued. "On our order. On our belief that war must be fought in a way that makes sense to us." She turned to the Union's high command. "The Erebus Swarm does not fight the way we do. So why do we insist on fighting the way they expect?" Silence filled the chamber. "What are you suggesting?" Chancellor Threx asked. Dr. Rowe hesitated, as if knowing that what she was about to propose would change the course of history. "There is one species," she said, "one that has fought wars unlike any other in the galaxy. A species whose military doctrine is built not on superior force, but on chaos, on deception, on war without rules." She met the Chancellor's gaze. Humanity. The reaction was immediate. Laughter, scorn, outrage. The humans? The warlike primitives the Union had deemed too unpredictable to be trusted? The species that had been denied full membership for refusing to abandon their violent nature? "They are reckless," one ambassador shouted. "They have no honor," another declared. "They cannot be controlled," growled a high-ranking general. Dr. Rowe waited, letting their protests die down before she spoke again. "All of that may be true, but tell me this." She gestured to the holographic projection of the Erebus Swarm's relentless advance. "Have any of our rules stopped this?" The chamber fell silent. For the first time in 1,000 years, the leaders of the Union had to accept the truth. Their way had failed, and if they wanted to survive, they would have to turn to the one species that had never followed the rules. They would have to turn to humanity. The Grand Intergalactic Union had spent centuries regarding humanity as a curiosity, an aggressive, chaotic species that refused to fully integrate into the galactic order. Unlike other civilizations that had surrendered their warlike tendencies in favor of diplomacy and technological advancement, humanity had stubbornly clung to the concept of conflict. While other species refined energy-based weaponry, humans still built ballistic firearms and explosive ordnance. While the Union sought peace through superior firepower and deterrence, humanity had spent its history perfecting the art of unconventional warfare. For this, they had been excluded. They were not enemies of the Union, nor were they allies. They were tolerated, allowed to exist on the fringes, relegated to trade and scientific exchange, but never permitted a seat at the table. The Union had deemed them too unpredictable, too dangerous. And now, as the Erebus Swarm devoured entire systems, unpredictability and danger were the only weapons they had left. The diplomatic vessel Tessur's Hope exited slipstream at the edge of Sol System, its sleek, silver hull a stark contrast to the human escort ships that flanked it upon arrival. Chancellor Valor Threx had sent his best diplomats, accompanied by none other than Dr. Sion Rowe, the xenostrategist who had convinced the Union to turn to humanity in the first place. Their mission was clear: convince humanity to help. Dr. Rowe had expected hostility. She had expected suspicion. But what she had not expected was silence. The humans did not respond to their diplomatic channels at first. When they finally did, it was not with formal greetings or bureaucratic red tape. It was with a single, blunt transmission from an unidentified officer on the human military outpost known as Blackrock Station. "Took you long enough." The diplomatic team was escorted to Earth, the human homeworld, and brought to a military installation hidden beneath the surface of the Andes Mountains. The location, heavily fortified and lined with defenses that no Union intelligence had ever known existed, set the tone before the meeting even began. Humanity did not trust them. The Union delegation was led into a vast underground war room, where dozens of human officers sat around a massive holographic table. Some wore traditional military uniforms, but many were dressed in the rough, practical attire of Special Operations Forces. Their faces were grim, their eyes sharp. At the head of the table stood Commander Elias Voss. He was tall by human standards, broad-shouldered, with short-cropped dark hair and the kind of presence that demanded attention without a single word spoken. His uniform bore no unnecessary decorations, only the sigil of the Terran Defense Coalition, a coalition that had never fully submitted to the Union's authority. Chancellor Threx sends his regards. Dr. Rowe began cautiously, choosing her words carefully. Voss stared at her for a long moment before replying. And now that the Union is losing, he suddenly finds value in us. The accusation stung, but Dr. Rowe did not deny it. We need your help, she said simply. Voss glanced around the room at his officers. Some scoffed. Others exchanged knowing looks. Humanity had always been prepared for the day the Union's arrogance would fail them. Still, Voss listened. Dr. Rowe and her delegation explained everything. How the Erebus Swarm had overwhelmed the Union's strongest fleets, how their strategies and weapons had been rendered useless, how every simulation predicted total extinction. They showed holograms of the Swarm's movements, battle footage from the doomed Union fleets, and a projection of how quickly the war would be lost if nothing changed. When they finished, the room was silent. Then Voss leaned forward. You still don't understand, do you? He said. The Union lost this war the moment they tried to fight it like every other war. Dr. Rowe frowned. Then what do you suggest? Voss folded his arms. You keep thinking of this as a battle. It's not. A battle implies two forces fighting under some kind of mutual understanding, territory, control, resources. The Swarm isn't fighting a battle. They're consuming. He tapped a command on the table, and a new display appeared. Unlike the precise fleet formations and strategic overlays of the Union, this was something different. It showed human war history, ancient Earth conflicts, guerrilla warfare, asymmetric engagements where outnumbered forces had shattered superior opponents. The Union fights with rules, Voss said. We don't. Dr. Rowe exchanged glances with her colleagues. What exactly are you proposing? She asked. Voss's lips curled into a grim smile. A new kind of war. The first thing the Union had to understand was that direct engagement was suicide. Traditional fleet battles, large-scale engagements, and numerical superiority had no meaning against the Swarm. Instead, humanity introduced a doctrine that had never before been considered by the Union. Deception, false intelligence, holographic fleets, and misinformation designed to lead the Swarm into ambushes. Guerrilla tactics, small, highly mobile strike teams operating behind enemy lines to disrupt Swarm infrastructure and weaken their advance. Psychological warfare. Humanity had learned long ago that even hive minds could be manipulated. They would find weaknesses in the Swarm's behavior and exploit them. Unconventional weapons. The Union's energy-based arsenal had failed, but humanity had plasma artillery, railguns, and nuclear warheads. The Swarm had never encountered anything like them. It was a radical departure from the Union's way of war, and not everyone was convinced. Union officers balked at the methods, calling them dishonorable, reckless, even barbaric. But as more planets fell, their resistance wavered. We don't care about honor, Voss told them. We care about winning. Despite their doubts, the Union agreed to let humanity prove their approach. They granted a single battle group of ships and a chance to strike at a minor Swarm force. Voss and his team devised a plan. They would use hacked Swarm signals to lure a section of the enemy fleet into a collapsing nebula, a region where human ships, smaller and more maneuverable, could navigate while the Swarm could not. The trap was set. When the Swarm forces arrived, expecting an easy victory, they were met with chaos. Human ships darted between debris, using ballistic projectiles and high-explosive warheads to tear through the Swarm's biological hulls. Disruptor beacons scrambled their coordination, forcing them into confused, erratic patterns. The battle lasted only minutes. But for the first time, the swarm lost. Humanity had just achieved what the Union had deemed impossible. Voss stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the burning wreckage of the swarm vessels. He turned to his second-in-command, a grizzled officer named Captain Aiden Mercer. "Think they're convinced yet?" Mercer asked. Voss exhaled. "They will be." The war had changed, and for the first time, the Erebus Swarm would learn what it meant to fight humanity. Humanity's victory in the collapsing nebula sent ripples throughout the Union. For the first time since the invasion began, there was hope. Fragile, perhaps, but hope nonetheless. But despite humanity's successful demonstration, the Union's high command remained wary. They struggled to reconcile humanity's unconventional methods with their millennia-old doctrines. In orbit around the Union capital world of Atria Prime, Commander Elias Voss stood aboard the bridge of the human flagship, the Endeavor. He was joined by a holographic projection of Supreme Chancellor Valer Threx and a reluctant Admiral Kirill, the Union's most decorated strategist. "Commander Voss," Chancellor Threx began, his voice betraying his unease, "you have proven your point. But your tactics, your methods, remain controversial." Commander Voss gave a calm but intense stare, aware that the Union's very survival depended on his next words. "Chancellor, your fleets have proven ineffective. To defeat an enemy like this, you need to understand that traditional strategies only strengthen them. They absorb your firepower, your formations, your predictable moves. They expect you to follow rules." Voss gestured to the holographic map before him, showing the rapidly shrinking Union territory. Each red-marked planet represented billions of lost lives, a civilization extinguished. The map had too many red markers to count. "You are asking us to wage war without honor, without dignity," Admiral Araktor, a highly respected member of the Union's military council, protested via hologram. His insectoid form shimmered in frustration. "This is unacceptable. Honorable defeat is still defeat," Voss replied coolly. "We fight to survive. Honor has no place here." Admiral Aria Lennox, Voss's trusted tactical advisor, stepped forward. "Give us the chance, Admiral. Give us the freedom to operate without restriction. Let us strike again, on our terms." After a tense silence, Chancellor Threx relented. "Very well, Commander Voss. Your people have one more chance. Prove your method was no fluke, or the Union will withdraw its support." Voss nodded, confident but wary. He knew humanity's approach wouldn't be fully trusted until it had repeatedly shown its worth. He turned to his officers, determination etched into his features. "Prepare for Operation Silent Nebula." 3 days later, the human task force quietly slipped into position near a distant nebula, a region dense with stellar debris, ion storms, and gravitational anomalies. It was the perfect battleground for human tactics, yet a nightmare for the Union's sophisticated ships, which required precise calculations to maneuver. On the bridge of Endeavor, Voss reviewed the battle plan again with his second-in-command, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell. A former cyber warfare specialist, Mitchell was instrumental in executing the complex strategy ahead. "Enemy presence confirmed," Mitchell announced, scanning the holographic data streaming in from cloaked drones. 3 Erebus dreadnoughts and their escort swarms, exactly as predicted. Voss felt his pulse quicken. Launch the decoys and begin the broadcast. With practiced efficiency, Mitchell relayed the order. Moments later, fake distress signals echoed across all frequencies, expertly mimicking the signature of a crippled Union fleet. The Erebus Swarm responded instantly, diverting course toward the perceived helpless prey. As the swarm advanced, the human fleet remained perfectly silent, their ships cloaked in the nebula's radiation. The enemy ships, biomechanical monstrosities bristling with organic weapons, were entirely oblivious to the trap ahead. At the exact moment the swarm's ships entered optimal range, humanity sprang their ambush. "Now!" Voss commanded sharply. Instantly, concealed explosives detonated throughout the nebula, igniting massive clouds of volatile gases. Blinding bursts of electromagnetic energy disrupted the swarm's senses, blinding their organic sensors and causing temporary chaos. The humans struck hard and fast. Squadrons of agile human strike craft swooped in, unleashing barges of kinetic railgun rounds and nuclear-tipped torpedoes, cutting into the enemy's ships before the Erebus could mount an organized response. But the swarm adapted quickly. Even blinded, they regrouped faster than anticipated, their regenerative hulls stitching themselves together moments after being damaged. They began to anticipate the humans' moves, countering with ruthless precision. "Commander, they're adapting faster than expected," Mitchell warned urgently. "Their pattern recognition is accelerating." Voss nodded grimly. "Activate Phase 2. Now." Mitchell transmitted the command. Moments later, a second wave of deception commenced. A series of holographic Union dreadnoughts appeared, their imposing forms seemingly emerging from warp behind the swarm. Panicked by what they perceived as a massive flank assault, the Erebus redirected much of their attention toward the Phantom Fleet. The confusion provided the opening humanity needed. Coordinated human strike teams, specially trained in sabotage and infiltration, penetrated enemy lines, planting devices designed to sever neural connections within Erebus ships. In seconds, the devices detonated. The swarm ships convulsed, drifting helplessly. With the enemy incapacitated, human cruisers opened fire once more, their railguns and missiles tearing apart the helpless enemy vessels. It was another impossible victory. Word spread quickly throughout the Union fleets, observing from afar. Despite their skepticism, the Union leaders had no choice but to acknowledge humanity's effectiveness. Humanity's tactics were brutal, unpredictable, and utterly unlike anything they had ever witnessed. But it had worked again. When the battle concluded, Voss received a direct transmission from Chancellor Threx himself. The leader appeared shaken, his elegant face weary but impressed. "Commander Voss," Threx admitted gravely, "you've done the impossible again. I do not fully understand your methods, but I can no longer deny their effectiveness." Voss didn't show any outward pride, only resolve. "Respectfully, Chancellor, this is only the beginning. We must abandon old notions of honorable warfare if the Union is to survive." Threx hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. "I understand your position. I give you full authorization to continue your strategies as you see fit. Humanity will have our full support." "Thank you, Chancellor. We won't let you down." When the transmission ended, Lieutenant Mitchell approached Voss, concern in her voice. "They still don't trust us." Voss sighed. "They don't need to trust us, Lieutenant. They just need to let us fight the way we know how. Eventually, they'll understand." Mitchell nodded slowly. "And if they don't?" Voss's eyes grew cold, his voice low but firm. "Then they'll die." As the victorious human fleet drifted silently through the debris-strewn battlefield, Voss knew the true war had just begun. The Erebus Swarm wouldn't underestimate humanity again, and next time, the victory would be harder won. Still, humanity had proven its worth. For the first time, the Union began to listen, not because they wanted to, but because they had no other choice. Humanity, the underdog, the overlooked, the unpredictable, had just become the Union's greatest weapon. Commander Elias Voss stood on the command deck of the Endeavor, gazing at a holographic representation of the Erebus Swarm's path of devastation through Union space. The image glowed with ominous intensity, a spreading wave of darkness swallowing star systems whole. Each pinprick of light extinguished on the map represented billions of lives lost. The Union was desperate. Their fleets had crumbled, their tactics rendered useless against the relentless, enigmatic enemy that defied every known principle of warfare. Voss knew that the victories humanity had won thus far, small yet significant, were not enough to reverse the tide. To win this war, humanity had to escalate their methods to unprecedented levels, methods that would horrify the Union even further. But survival required no apologies. As he stared at the carnage displayed before him, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell approached, her expression strained. "The Union High Command is on the line, sir," she reported quietly. "They're waiting in the strategy room." Voss nodded, his expression unreadable. "Time to explain again why we can't fight this war politely." As Voss entered the briefing room, holographic images of Union leaders, representatives from dozens of species, stared back at him. Supreme Chancellor Valor Threx stood foremost, his expression a mixture of anxiety and reluctant hope. "Commander Voss," Chancellor Threx began, his voice heavy, "your methods have proven effective twice now, but many within the Union struggle to accept your tactics." "Chancellor," Voss interjected respectfully, "I understand their hesitance, but every attempt to fight this enemy conventionally ends in disaster. The Erebus Swarm does not respond to diplomacy, conventional warfare, or superior firepower. We cannot fight fairly against an enemy that disregards rules." Admiral Arya, standing beside the Chancellor, interjected sharply. "So you'd have us embrace barbarism? To surrender the very principles upon which the Union was founded?" "The Swarm is winning precisely because you refuse to adapt," Voss responded firmly. "I'm asking you to abandon your old ways, not your principles. This war demands that we rewrite the rules entirely." Admiral Arya narrowed her eyes, tension radiating from her posture. But Chancellor Threx intervened before she could argue further. "What exactly do you propose, Commander?" Voss activated the holographic display. "War without rules," he declared. Instantly, the display changed, highlighting detailed strategies carefully prepared by human military analysts. Union commanders leaned forward, curiosity and unease in their eyes as the presentation began. Deception operations. Union and Swarm communication systems would be infiltrated by Mitchell's cyber warfare teams, planting false information and fabricated battle orders, sowing confusion and mistrust among the Erebus forces. It was warfare not of weapons, but of information, something entirely foreign to the Union. Holographic decoys. Deploy fleets of convincing holographic dreadnoughts, complete with energy signatures and weapons emissions, to lead swarm units into ambushes and trap zones, or away from critical civilian population centers. The Union had always scoffed at this technique, deeming it cowardly, but humans had no qualms about luring the enemy into traps. Guerrilla sabotage. Mobile strike teams of elite human soldiers, embedded deep within enemy-held space, would destroy critical biological and structural elements of swarm ships. These teams would rely on stealth, speed, and cunning rather than brute force. To the Union, this tactic was suicidal, yet humanity had built its entire military doctrine around such methods. "Commander," Admiral Araktor spoke up, his voice shaking with apprehension, "your proposals border on madness. Guerrilla warfare, falsehood, sabotage. These violate every known rule of honorable conflict." "Respectfully, Admiral," Voss countered, "your rules are the very reason the Swarm has outsmarted you at every turn. Honor is meaningless to an enemy who seeks your annihilation. We don't have the luxury of morality here, only survival." The room fell into tense silence. Chancellor Threx sighed deeply, his expression conflicted but resolute. "Do what you must, Commander Voss," Threx finally said. "The Union will support your efforts, however reluctantly." Voss inclined his head slightly in acknowledgement. "Then prepare yourselves, because what comes next won't be pleasant." The next weeks saw humanity's strategy unfold like a terrible but necessary storm. Cyber warfare specialists aboard cloaked ships breached Erebus communication channels, planting carefully constructed lies. The Swarm's hyper-intelligent yet hive-minded structure was initially resilient, but soon tiny cracks appeared, hesitations, confused swarming behaviors, and erratic tactical choices. In simultaneous moves, humanity dispatched guerrilla strike teams into Erebus-held territory. These elite units, operating in darkness and silence, sabotaged supply depots, fuel cells, and the Swarm's organic refineries. Each strike was precise, surgical, and devastatingly effective. But no mission exemplified humanity's ruthlessness more than the strike on Tehran V, A captured Union industrial world turned into a nightmarish Erebus stronghold. Instead of a conventional orbital bombardment, human operatives infiltrated the planet, disguised as the very Union civilians that the swarm assimilated. Once planetside, they unleashed a series of devastating biochemical attacks designed specifically to disrupt the swarm's biomass processing centers. The aftermath left Tehran V in ruins, and many Union generals found the tactic horrifyingly ruthless, but undeniably effective. For humanity, victory was survival, and survival justified any cost. Even as human tactics began turning the tide in localized battles, Union generals and leaders struggled with the methods. Chancellor Threx convened a private meeting with Voss aboard the Endeavour, his usually unshakable demeanor wavering. "Commander," Threx began hesitantly, "there are factions within the Union demanding we cease collaboration with your people. They call your strategies dishonorable, even monstrous." Voss turned calmly toward the Chancellor. "And you? Do you agree with them?" "No," Threx replied quietly, eyes cast downward. "But they fear your methods might cost us our souls, even if we win." Voss looked at the Chancellor carefully. "We never wanted this fight. But now that we're in it, we can't afford half measures. War has never been honorable, Chancellor. Not for us. For humanity, war has always been about survival." Threx nodded slowly. "You frighten many within the Union, Commander Voss. Not because of what you do, but because you're willing to do it without hesitation." Voss gave a bitter smile. "Maybe that's exactly why you need us." The Erebus Swarm had conquered half of Union territory in mere months. Yet, for the first time, their advance slowed. The Swarm hesitated, uncertain and wary, forced onto the defensive by an enemy whose methods defied all their instincts and calculations. On the bridge of the Endeavour, Elias Voss watched the hologram of the galactic battlefield shift, Union systems flickering back to life as Erebus strongholds collapsed. For all the doubts, the arguments, and the fears of the Union, humanity's unconventional war was undeniably working. Lieutenant Mitchell approached him again, a slight smile of grim satisfaction on her lips. "They're finally beginning to understand," she said quietly. "They see us as their saviors, even as they condemn our methods." Voss shook his head slightly. "Then we'll keep doing exactly what we're doing until they realize there's only one rule in war." "And that is," she asked, "to win." Humanity had transformed from overlooked outcasts to indispensable allies. They'd shown the galaxy a new truth, that survival meant abandoning tradition. But the greatest battles were yet to come. The Erebus Swarm had faltered, but not yet broken. Humanity's unconventional warfare had bought time, disrupted the enemy, and inspired desperate hope among the remaining Union worlds. Yet Commander Elias Voss knew it would not be enough to achieve ultimate victory. The Swarm's adaptability had proven nearly limitless, their hive mind resilient despite humanity's most ruthless efforts. To truly defeat the Swarm, humanity needed information, something impossible to gather from conventional intelligence. Humanity had to go deeper, directly into the heart of their enemy. Standing in the strategy chamber aboard the Endeavour, Voss outlined a new plan, one so daring, so dangerous, that even his seasoned human officers paled at its implications. A direct infiltration into Erebus-controlled territory. The objective: uncover the source of the Swarm's unity, its hidden vulnerability, if one existed at all. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell voiced the question everyone else hesitated to ask. "Commander, sending a team directly into Erebus territory. It's suicide." Voss looked at her grimly. "We're already in a war for survival. Every action we take risks everything. We need to know our enemy's greatest weakness. We need to understand the Erebus hive mind itself." Colonel Marcus Jovan, commander of the Shadow Walkers, stepped forward, his eyes fierce. "My teams are ready. We've infiltrated enemy worlds before, but this goes beyond anything we've attempted." Voss nodded slowly. "The Union will insist on sending one of their own as well. They don't trust us completely yet, and they'll want eyes on our methods." Jovan frowned. "A Union officer would slow us down." Their rules. Their rules won't matter this far behind enemy lines, Voss interrupted. We're already operating without restraint. A single Union observer changes nothing. When Supreme Chancellor Valor Threx was briefed, he reluctantly agreed, under the condition that one of the Union's most trusted officers accompany the human infiltration team. He chose Turon Vel, a decorated military tactician known for both his bravery and his unwavering adherence to traditional Union warfare doctrine. Vel was an idealistic officer who openly distrusted humanity's approach. As Vel arrived aboard the Endeavor, he greeted Voss with a stiff salute, but his eyes revealed deep skepticism. I do not understand your species' methods, Vel admitted bluntly, but the Chancellor believes your tactics are necessary. I hope to find him correct. Voss returned the salute, calm but unyielding. I understand your reservations, Officer Vel. This mission will push your limits, and it won't conform to Union standards. But if we succeed, it may turn the entire war. Vel nodded curtly, clearly unconvinced. I will follow your orders, Commander. But understand, I am here to bear witness as much as to assist. The mission began under cover of darkness, the infiltration team descending onto Acheron, a former Union colony world now fully assimilated by the Erebus Swarm. From orbit, the planet looked like a dark, infected wound, the surface pulsating with eerie, biomechanical growths. Colonel Yovan led the small team, comprised of elite Shadow Walker operatives, Lieutenant Mitchell handling cyber warfare, and Officer Vel, who remained tense and uneasy throughout their descent. They landed in the desolate outskirts of a once thriving city, now transformed into a horrific biomechanical nightmare. Buildings merged grotesquely with living tissue, the air thick with spores and alien humidity. Stay alert, Yovan warned quietly, his voice barely audible through the respirators. They'll sense us quickly. Moving silently, the team advanced toward the central spire, a towering, grotesque structure pulsating with an alien heartbeat, radiating waves of psychic energy. They moved swiftly, dodging small Erebus patrols, creatures that were part machine, part organism, constantly shifting shape and purpose. The swarm was everywhere, yet so far oblivious to the humans in their midst. As the team penetrated deeper into Erebus territory, Officer Vel struggled visibly, overwhelmed by the environment's oppressive, surreal horror. Finally, he spoke, voice trembling with disgust. This is what your methods have reduced us to, Vel accused quietly. Sneaking through nightmare worlds, fighting without honor, like animals? Yovan spun toward Vel sharply, anger flashing in his eyes. We're alive because we fight like animals. Because we fight without the constraints of your precious honor. Mitchell interjected softly, trying to defuse the tension. Officer Vel, understand. This enemy doesn't see honor or nobility. It sees only prey. Vel's expression softened, albeit reluctantly. He nodded slowly. I understand. I apologize. This is difficult for me. Stay focused, Yovan growled. We're nearing the objective. Finally, the infiltration team reached the heart of the spire. Mitchell quickly connected her equipment to a pulsing neural conduit, fingers flying over the controls, eyes wide with amazement. This isn't just infrastructure, she whispered, mingling with horror. This is part of the swarm's mind itself. A neuron in a galaxy-wide brain. Voss's voice broke through their comms, quiet but intense. Can you disrupt it? No, Mitchell admitted breathlessly. It's too resilient, but we might trace it to its source. Find its core, the swarm's true center of consciousness. Do it, Voss commanded without hesitation. Mitchell complied instantly, initiating a trace. Her screen illuminated, maps and coordinates flooding the display. Her eyes widened in shock. We found it. The swarm's core. It's deep in enemy-held territory. A living world. An entire planet integrated into the hive mind. Voss spoke decisively. Get that data out of there. The Union must know. But just as Mitchell began downloading the data, alarms exploded around them, a psychic scream resonating through every member of the team. "They know we're here," Vel shouted, finally snapping from his stunned paralysis. "We must withdraw immediately." As swarms of monstrous guardians surged toward them, the team fought desperately. Weapons fire echoed through the corridor, but Erebus reinforcements poured in endlessly, their numbers inexhaustible. Officer Vel hesitated a moment, then made a sudden decision. "Complete your extraction. I'll hold them here." "What are you doing?" Jovan shouted. Vel's gaze met Jovan's, resolute and determined. "Buying you time. Tell Chancellor Threk's humanity was right. Tell him honor is worthless without survival." With a final salute, Vel charged forward into the mass of enemy creatures, detonating charges strapped to his armor. The resulting explosion tore through the Erebus Guardians, buying precious seconds for the team's escape. Jovan stared back briefly, respect mingling with sorrow. "Let's move." Hours later, aboard the Endeavor, Voss stood solemnly beside Mitchell, reviewing the critical data she'd extracted. The sacrifice of Turon Vel weighed heavily on everyone. The data revealed a terrifying truth. The Erebus Swarm's unity derived from a single colossal structure, a biological nexus called the neurocore. Destroying it would cripple the entire hive mind, but doing so would also wipe out every Erebus-controlled organism simultaneously. The scale of such an attack terrified even Voss. Yet he knew this was exactly why humanity had been called upon, to make decisions that the Union never could. Chancellor Threx appeared via hologram once more, visibly shaken by Vel's sacrifice. "Commander Voss," he spoke quietly, grief-stricken but resolute. "Is this truly our only choice?" Voss replied gravely, voice steady with the weight of the galaxy. "It is. If we don't destroy their neurocore, every world, yours and ours, will fall." Threx hesitated only briefly. "Then do what must be done, Commander. For all our sakes." Humanity had entered the belly of the beast and emerged with the knowledge they needed. But their next step would be the hardest yet, a final gamble that could determine the survival or destruction of the entire galaxy. Commander Elias Voss prepared himself to fight one final, terrible battle, the war without rules now culminating in an unimaginable decision. He would unleash everything humanity had, and pray it would be enough. Commander Elias Voss watched quietly as the strategy room aboard the Endeavor filled with human and Union officers, all tense, each face etched by exhaustion and grim determination. They stood around a vast holographic projection of the Erebus Swarm's core, the nerve center of the enemy hive mind, a pulsing organic structure embedded deep within a massive asteroid orbiting the darkened remains of a star known as Argus Null. This was humanity's last, greatest gamble, the final strike that could either end the war or doom the galaxy entirely. The room fell silent as Supreme Chancellor Valar Threx appeared via hologram, his expression somber yet resolute. Beside him stood Admiral Arya and Dr. Sion Rowe, both now fully supportive despite the grim nature of the planned operation. "Commander Voss," Threx began quietly, his voice heavy with the weight of their collective decision, "you've brought us to the edge of victory at terrible cost. We trust you to finish this." Voss inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the weight of responsibility. "Thank you, Chancellor. The enemy's neurocore is deep inside Erebus territory. Any conventional assault would be impossible. Instead, we must strike with precision, deception, and absolute ruthlessness." Threx nodded gravely. "We trust you. Lead us to victory." The plan was as audacious as it was complex. A massive diversionary assault would draw Erebus forces away, leaving the neurocore vulnerable. Humanity's entire arsenal, every unconventional tactic and strategy developed throughout the war, would converge into a single unified operation of unprecedented complexity. Human strike teams, led personally by Colonel Marcus Jovan, would penetrate the heart of Erebus space aboard small stealth vessels, equipped with stolen enemy signatures to slip undetected through their defenses. Meanwhile, Voss and Mitchell would command an elaborate deception from the Endeavor, using holographic decoys, hacked Erebus communications, and psychological warfare on an unprecedented scale. The objective was chaos, a maelstrom of confusion that would force the enemy to spread thin, exposing their vital center. But no one underestimated the risk. Even with the Union's combined strength backing humanity, this was a one-way mission for many involved. There would be no turning back. The operation began in silence. The Shadow Walkers slipped into Erebus-controlled space, gliding through enemy sensor grids disguised by Mitchell's cyber attacks. Tension aboard each infiltration vessel was palpable, the operators holding their breath as massive Erebus bioships drifted ominously past, unaware of their presence. Colonel Marcus Jovan stood at the helm of the lead stealth ship, expression focused. Approaching primary insertion coordinates, he transmitted quietly to Voss aboard the Endeavor. "Awaiting your distraction." "Copy," came Voss's steady reply. "Stand by." On the bridge of the Endeavor, Mitchell's hands flew across holographic interfaces, initiating Phase 1 of their deception. Immediately, phantom fleets appeared on Erebus sensors, accompanied by false communications reporting major Union counterattacks across multiple fronts. The swarm reacted with predictable aggression, sending massive reinforcements in all directions, except the critical path to their core. "Decoys are holding," Mitchell reported, voice tight with adrenaline. "They're taking the bait." Voss watched silently, fully aware that the next moments could decide everything. Deep within Erebus territory, Joven's strike team approached their target. The neurocore, a colossal, planet-sized structure composed of twisting organic matter and glowing nerve clusters. Its sheer scale was awe-inspiring and terrifying. Erebus vessels still patrolled the region, oblivious to the tiny human craft slowly descending toward the pulsating surface of the monstrosity. They landed softly, barely disturbing the grotesque, living tissue beneath their feet. As they stepped out, a sickly organic mist enveloped them, a disturbing blend of warm moisture and static energy crawling over their suits. "Let's move," Jovan commanded sharply, leading the team into the alien labyrinth. As they advanced through eerie corridors and chambers alive with strange bioluminescence, the team planted charges designed to disrupt the immense neural networks. But deep inside, they knew the core itself required direct action. On the Endeavor, Mitchell's deception continued flawlessly, but Voss felt a growing sense of dread. His instincts told him something was wrong. Suddenly, alarms blared. Erebus ships had abruptly changed course, diverting back toward the neurocore. The enemy had realized the deception too soon. "They've adapted," Mitchell shouted, panic creeping into her voice. "The swarm's closing on our strike teams." Voss tightened his jaw. "Warn Jovan now, then prepare a distraction. We'll buy them every second we can." Mitchell nodded grimly, launching everything they had left, decoys, cyber attacks, even suicidal drone strikes, to confuse the Erebus. Yet, inexorably, the swarm closed in on Joven's location. Inside the neurocore, Colonel Jovan knew their time was almost up. Erebus Guardians descended in overwhelming waves. Fighting furiously, the humans moved deeper into the labyrinthine corridors. Jovan led fiercely, cutting through enemy after enemy, determined to reach the core's heart. Yet each hallway became increasingly crowded with grotesque guardians, monstrous amalgamations that absorbed damage and regenerated within moments. Realizing their only chance was a direct assault, Jovan shouted orders. "Charges ready. Punch through, whatever the cost." One by one, his operatives fell, each sacrificing themselves heroically, buying moments for the survivors. Jovan himself was critically wounded, yet pushed on relentlessly. Above, watching from afar, Commander Voss clenched his fists tightly. "Colonel Jovan, report." The response crackled through distorted, bloodied comms. "We're at the core. Everyone's down. It's just me now." Voss hesitated only briefly. "Jovan, the galaxy is counting on you." Jovan took a shuddering breath, accepting his fate. "Understood, Commander." With his final strength, Jovan reached the neurocore's central chamber, a vast space filled with pulsating nerves and bioluminescent tendrils. He raised his weapon, detonator gripped tightly in his other hand. "This is for humanity," he whispered defiantly. Jovan detonated the charges. The explosion was cataclysmic, instantly severing the core from its vast neural network. Psychic feedback tore through the Erebus Swarm, instantly severing their collective consciousness. Across their controlled territories, enemy ships convulsed violently, their coordination shattered. Aboard the Endeavor, Mitchell's eyes widened. "Commander, he did it. The swarm is collapsing." Voss exhaled deeply, relief washing over him like a wave. Yet sorrow filled his heart for Jovan and all those lost in the desperate gambit. Chancellor Threx appeared via hologram moments later, clearly stunned by what he had witnessed. "Commander Voss, your people have once again achieved the impossible. Yet the price was terribly high." Voss's eyes met the Chancellor's. Every soldier who died knew the price. They willingly paid it. For humanity, survival is worth any cost. Threx nodded solemnly. "Then we owe you our very existence." Voss stared into space, voice low but firm. "We're not done yet, Chancellor. The swarm's collapse will give us a window, but we must finish this war completely. No mercy, no hesitation." The Chancellor, visibly changed by what he'd witnessed, nodded. "We will follow your lead, Commander. Humanity is now our only hope, and we are with you to the very end." Commander Elias Voss had gambled everything and won, but the cost had been unimaginable. As he watched the scattered remnants of the Erebus Swarm drifting helplessly, he knew their greatest battle was nearly over. Yet, deep in his gut, he also understood that this would not be the last test humanity would face. The galaxy had been forever changed, and humanity, once outsiders, were now heroes, destined to lead a shattered union into the future. One last battle awaited, the ultimate reckoning. But for now, they had won the most crucial victory of all. The Erebus Swarm was defeated, yet the galaxy remained forever altered. Entire star systems lay ravaged, worlds reduced to rubble and ruin. The Union, once unchallenged and unshakable, now stood on the precipice, forced to acknowledge its vulnerabilities. Their way of war had failed utterly, nearly leading to their annihilation. It was humanity, previously shunned, belittled, and underestimated, that had saved them, using tactics once deemed dishonorable, even barbaric. In the aftermath of victory, Supreme Chancellor Valor Threx convened an unprecedented summit on the Union capital of Ilithia Prime. Representatives from thousands of civilizations gathered in the vast halls of the Celestial Spire, beneath soaring ceilings of transparent crystal through which countless stars gleamed, stars humanity had saved from annihilation. At the summit's center stood Commander Elias Voss, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell by his side. Both wore the weight of exhaustion and grief, yet beneath their tired exteriors was unmistakable pride. They had done what no other species could, fought a war without rules, and emerged victorious. Chancellor Threx addressed the gathering, his voice steady but infused with humility born of hard-learned lessons. "Citizens of the Union, we stand here today because of humanity, a species we once considered beneath our notice. Their approach, unorthodox and frightening as it was, has taught us a lesson we must never forget. Survival requires adaptation, and adaptation requires courage to abandon tradition." Silence filled the chamber, thousands of beings recognizing the truth in his words. Threx continued, his gaze settling firmly upon Commander Voss. "We owe humanity not only our gratitude, but also an apology. We dismissed you as reckless, barbaric, and undisciplined. Yet, without your methods, the galaxy would be nothing more than an Erebus feeding ground. For this, humanity has earned a place at our side." Threx paused, then declared solemnly, not merely as members of the Union, but as its guardians. Surprised murmurs filled the chamber. Humanity, a civilization previously seen as a threat to peace, now chosen as the protectors of that very peace. Admiral Arias stepped forward, speaking softly yet with conviction. Humanity has taught us what true strength means. Not technology, but adaptability. Not power, but unpredictability. Not pride, but resilience. Their courage saved us all. She turned respectfully toward Commander Elias Voss, who stood silently at the head of the human delegation. Commander, the galaxy owes you and your people a debt we can never fully repay. Voss stepped forward calmly, his expression composed but heavy with the weight of the losses he had endured. Humanity never sought glory. He began quietly, meeting the eyes of Union representatives. We never desired accolades or recognition. We fought simply to survive, and survival often demands choices we would rather not make. He paused, allowing his words to resonate throughout the hall. But we accept your offer. Humanity will join the Union, not as passive members, but as guardians. Guardians who understand war is not a game of honor or tradition. Guardians who know that to keep the peace, one must always be prepared to embrace chaos. Applause filled the chamber, hesitant at first, but soon swelling into a thunderous roar of agreement. Humanity, once scorned, was now ascendant. In the weeks following the summit, humanity quickly adapted to its new role. Human military advisors and strategists were integrated into every sector of Union command, fundamentally altering how defense and warfare were approached galaxy-wide. The human presence was initially met with discomfort by those Union civilizations still clinging to their traditions, but results silenced any lingering critics. Human tactics, once thought dishonorable, soon became standard practice, emphasizing flexibility, unpredictability, and rapid adaptation. Deception, guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, all were integrated into a new unified doctrine designed to ensure the galaxy would never again face annihilation unprepared. Yet Voss knew victory came at a heavy price. He often walked the memorial halls aboard the Endeavor, honoring fallen soldiers from all civilizations, humans and Union alike, who had sacrificed everything to ensure survival. Their names were etched in crystalline monuments scattered throughout countless worlds, a solemn reminder of war's brutal cost. One evening, as Voss stood alone in front of a memorial bearing Colonel Marcus Joven's name, Lieutenant Mitchell quietly approached, her expression pensive. "They call us heroes now," she said softly, her eyes reflecting the monument's gentle glow. "But it doesn't erase what we did, or what we lost." Voss shook his head slowly. "No, it doesn't, but it gives their deaths meaning. They knew the stakes." Mitchell's voice softened. "Do you think the galaxy will ever truly accept us? Our methods terrify them, even now." Voss considered her question thoughtfully. "Maybe not entirely, but they don't have to accept us completely. Just trust us. The galaxy needs guardians who understand that war can't always be fought with honor or tradition. Humanity fills that role." She nodded solemnly, accepting his words, knowing their hard-won peace remained fragile. In the months that followed, humanity's integration into the Union reshaped the very fabric of galactic society. A new peace emerged, born not from arrogant dominance, but from humility, cooperation, and newfound vigilance. Yet even in victory, humanity prepared for future threats. Earth, once on the fringes of galactic civilization, became the new heart of Union military strategy. Human ingenuity shaped a new era, where threats were anticipated and rules rewritten daily. The rest of the galaxy gradually adjusted, embracing this strange, resilient species as guardians who ensured their survival. 1 year after the defeat of the Erebus Swarm, Commander Voss received an urgent transmission from the outermost edge of known space. He stood with Mitchell and Chancellor Threx in humanity's new Galactic Defense Command headquarters. The transmission was faint, corrupted by interference, yet its implication unmistakable, a coded message emanating from far beyond known space, originating from a region even the Union had not yet explored. The transmission was short, cryptic, and chilling. "You defeated the Erebus Swarm. You have our attention. We will arrive soon. Prepare yourselves." The room fell deathly silent. Chancellor Threx, turned to Voss, his eyes filled with dread. It seems our war was only the beginning. Voss nodded grimly, already feeling the familiar urgency building within him. Then we adapt again. We rewrite the rules again. Mitchell smiled slightly, determination lighting her eyes. At least now they'll listen. Yes, Voss agreed quietly. And next time, we'll be ready. Humanity had ascended, not through strength alone, but through adaptability, ingenuity, and willingness to fight without rules. Yet victory had taught the galaxy a profound lesson. Survival required constant vigilance, preparedness, and unpredictability. As Commander Elias Voss stood staring into the endless expanse of stars, he knew their work had only begun. The Erebus War had changed humanity forever, but more importantly, it had taught the galaxy that peace was always fragile. Now entrusted as guardians, humanity prepared itself for what lay ahead, aware that this war had been just the beginning, and that darker threats lay waiting in the endless darkness between stars. For humanity, the war without rules would never truly end. They would forever be ready,